He lights me up and I know it's over, so I pull over and they're like, "Can I see your license?" And I'm like, "I ain't got one."
I believe you have it, sir.
Non-apologetic
Nonsense.
All right, it's been a while since we did one of these, but if memory serves, we concluded with the trial from where I had stole the car and drove it into someone's house, okay? They obviously took my license for, I think it was only like 3 years.
Understandable.
But I was continuing to drive during that 3-year period, which I think this is about 6 months later. I had drove down to my brother's house, okay? He lives about an hour and a half away. I went down there and I think I had drunk a tall boy. On the way back, I'm like, well, I'm gonna grab another tall boy, enjoy my driving illegal drive, okay? I'm on the highway, I'm good. I can remember I went in and the place I stopped at was like a little mom and pop gas station just on the highway. Like there's nothing anywhere near it. So I thought I was being slick. I like grabbed my tall boy and I'm like, for later, right? So as I'm driving, I'm drinking, the sun goes down. Okay, so now we're night driving, drinking, which is not smart at all. But what really isn't smart is what I decide to do next. I get a phone call from this dude, the Lion Hawaiian, and he's at a bar. So I was like, all right, hell, I'll stop by, have me one or two. So go there, we wind up shutting the place down. This was at Stone's Corner. There used to be a bar there, right? Afterwards, when they let everybody out, I got my trunk open and I'm selling CDs, right? Just drunk at this point. Not hammered, but, drunk enough I shouldn't have been driving. And I didn't understand that there was like a unmarked police car parked over there at Sonic across the street. I think it's Sonic, whatever that is. And so I'm selling CDs. Probably looks like I'm serving the fiends, So after all that's said and done, I get in my vehicle. I start heading down the highway. I live about 10 minutes from there. And basically, that's my breaking point. If I can get past that stoplight that's right where I'm at without a cop behind me, there's not going to be any cops. I pull out, and I wasn't even on the road for 15 seconds, and the cop pulls behind me, and I just knew by the headlights before he even hit the cherries and berries. I'm like, shit, right? So, sure enough, he lights me up, and I know it's over, so I pull over, and they're like, "Can I see your license?" And I'm like, "I ain't got one."
I believe you have it, sir.
I always tell them the same thing. I'm like, I don't want to do a field sobriety test. Just give me the breathalyzer. And he's like, well, I don't have one, but if you're refusing field sobriety test, I'm going to take you in and we're going to get an actual blower at the station. I'm like, well, all right, well, then that's what we're doing, So I go ahead and I lock the vehicle up. I get arrested, and he takes me to Webb City PD. He was a county or a state cop, I'm not sure, but their blower was down. So we sit there in the station in the booking area for like 20, 30 minutes while these guys are dinking with it, pressing buttons, not knowing what they're doing, trying to get it to work. Eventually he goes, all right, we're going to have to go somewhere else. So the guy puts me back in handcuffs and he drives me to Carterville. Okay. Sure enough, theirs isn't working as well, but they think they can get it working. So
why do they think Carterville is an upgrade from Webb?
I don't know. So we are now at, by the time they get the blower to work, we're at, my cord is all tangled up. We're at about 2 hours since my traffic stop. I blew a .085. So in other words, another 30 minutes and I would have been under the legal limit, and they have to go by, you know what I mean? It didn't matter that it had been 2 hours and I was obviously, a lot more drunk. I would have blew higher if they had done it at that point. Right. So after all this, they don't make me bail out. Now I do get formally charged and they release me on my own recognizance. So Carterville Police Station is sort of off on its own.
Yep.
So they're like, we'll get to walking, buddy. So I'm walking about 30 minutes, and eventually I get onto the main stretch there in Carterville. What road is that? Like sure. So I'm walking down there, and one of the Carterville cops pulls up, and I guess he went to high school with me. And he's like, hop in, I'll give you a ride. And I'm like, no.
No, thank you.
And he's like, dude, it's like midnight or, by this point, I guess it would have been way into the morning. So it was probably 2 or 3 in the morning. And he's like, da-da-da-da-da, you're not going to be able to get a cab. I was like, no, I'm good. I will walk. Because, see, when I was a kid, I was hanging out at this girl's house, Christine, and we went to the store. And I had herb on me. And I didn't want to leave the herb at her house because I thought someone there would steal it. And we get pulled over right as we're pulling back into her house. I get arrested. And then eventually they release me. And the cop's like, I'll drive you to where you need to go. I was like, all right. So, I'm probably like 16, 17. He takes me back to a house I told him to go to. He shines his light. He writes down the address. And then he goes up and knocks on the door and just gets in everybody's business. So I'm like, yeah, we're not, you know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not doing that again. So I called the Lion Hawaiian, and he talks one of his buddies into coming and picking me up. So they picked me up, and the cop had told me, he's like, your car better still be there throughout the entire night. I'm going to be driving by, and I'm going to be checking. You better not go back to your car and drive home. So that's where we went, right? We went, this was just a dead road, you could see, you could hear a car coming for a half mile. And we kind of sit there for a moment, and I was like, all right, it's time. So I hop in the driver's seat, I take it on home, and that was the evening. Now, we have another trial for this one, okay? But the states weren't talking to each other. So that DWI where I ran into that person's house was in Kansas. This was in Missouri. So I was still only tried as a second offender, even though it was my third DWI, which would have been a felony otherwise and probably jail time. So I get tried as a 2-time offender, and they take my license for 3 years, okay? The 3 years passes, okay? I've had to bum rides. I've had to have sex with every fat girl in the county to make sure I could get where I needed to go. Probably would have done it anyways. But I go up to the DMV. I take my driving test. They run my name. Everything's good. I pass my driving test. I'm just sitting there like a good boy, waiting on, they'd already taken my picture, everything, waiting on them to print out my license. It starts taking more time. And more time. What had happened was, at that point, they run you through the national database. So even though I was tried as a second offender, they saw the third one at the DMV. So the woman goes, here. And she passes me a note like it's a bundle of drugs, right? And I open it up, and I can still remember the feeling. Your license is suspended for 10 years. And I remember my heart sinking. I already went out, bought a new vehicle. Like, everything was supposed to be golden at this point. So I just felt the feeling of reading on that piece of paper that my license was gone for 10 years. I was just so defeated, right? It just let all the air out. And I'm just sitting there in the DMV like, I fucking drove here, Wind up going back home, winded up selling the car. But at this point, my license was gone for 10 years. So now at the 7-year point, I was able to get a blower, and so I had the blower in for 3 years, and it wasn't but a couple years ago that I got the blower taken out. I think having the blower in the vehicle may have sucked more than not having a license. Like when it was cold, it wouldn't work right. Sometimes it would false read. So like we do a rolling start, it'll have you blow randomly going down the road to make sure, someone else didn't blow into it to start it for you. And then it would tell me, you've tested positive, vehicle's being disabled in 2 minutes, and I'd just be stuck on the side of the road for hours. And the thing would leach off of my battery. So I would constantly have a dead battery. And when your battery goes dead and you have a blower in it, you have to pay the guy who services the blower every month to either come out to your house and reset it or give you a code to where you can drive directly to him. And you only get so many of those. But it was the blower that was doing it. Because once it got taken out of my vehicle, there were no more issues. But
This all sounds like a scam.
I couldn't even get my vehicle worked on because most shops didn't want to deal with it because of the blower. I was like, I'll hang out here, I'll blow into it, I'll move it wherever. Yeah, but every month you have to pay them, I don't remember, it's like $130 or $230 just for the privilege of having that blower. And then they reset it, and you kind of have to sit there at a shop for like 2 hours, Yeah, it was a pretty sad time in my life. Matter of fact, the blowers have like little replaceable mouthpieces, little plastic just mouthpieces. I still have one that's displayed in my pickup, even right now. You know what I mean? Just as a reminder of how bad, because you forget sometimes, like how bad stuff can get. But yeah, after the third DWI, after the 10-year revocation, I am now fully licensed, fully sober, and ready to drive on over to your mother's house. You know what I mean? Like, we are just rocking and rolling now. But that's the weird things. Like, all these DWIs were within like 3 years of each other or so, and you don't think the consequences apply to you. You know what I mean? I'm like, fuck them. I'm gonna do whatever the hell I want, because even now I'll defend it, because only one of those DWIs was I even really drunk. My first DWI I blew .081. My third I blew .085. Now the second one, I don't know. I think I was like .29 or something, Second one, I should not have been driving. The other two I will defend. But yeah, I am still paying consequences for these. And I believe I'll have consequences forever. It messed up me trying to be a pilot. I can't even get a chauffeur's license if I wanted one. You know what I mean? Never be a FedEx driver. Like, anything that involves me driving is just an O for me. Plus, every time I get pulled over and they run my name, they don't ask me if I've been drinking. It's how much you've been drinking tonight. And I always push back. I'm like, why start this interaction that way? Why not ask me if I've been drinking? Why not take a moment and evaluate? Do I smell like alcohol? Do I look like I've been using alcohol? It's like, no, I use drugs. I don't use alcohol.
I'm an adult now.
Yeah, no shit. But yeah, so let this be a cautionary tale to everyone, or not. I mean, I really don't give a shit if you get 12 DWIs. Dude we went to high school with, he winded up getting like 5 or 6 DWIs, right? And then he disappeared for a while. He went to the pen. And then I kept hearing that like he'd get another DWI while he was still on probation, and then they'd revoke it, and then he'd have to go do 2 years, and then he'd get another one. Cha-ching, eBay. But some people just don't learn. I learned. It just took me 3 times to actually learn what would happen. And lucky for me, because the criminal justice system is so retarded here, and they don't talk to each other where we live at, that I was able to skate through. And even though I got the 10-year revocation punishment as a third DWI offender, I never got the actual punishment for it, because I should be a felon for it, and I should have had to have done time. And if I can pull another rabbit out of my freaking panties, I'm going to get the one in Kansas expunged, and then I'm going to go fly planes. So remember that next time you're on American Airlines or Frontier, I might be the one controlling your life. You ever see that movie with Denzel Washington where he flies drunk? He's a pilot. That is an amazing movie.
It is.
I think that's what made me want to be a pilot. It's always like criminal shows. Like what made me want to get my the firearm dealer license I have was it was like a Matthew McConaughey movie. And he was an FFL, but he was also illegally selling guns out of his trunk. And I remember being like, wait, people can just sell guns out of their home? I want to do that. Or no, it wasn't that Denzel Washington movie. It was like a Tom Cruise movie where he's like a pilot and he winds up flying drugs for like the cartel from like Mexico.
Yeah. And
like they'd be kicking bundles out of like the little chute hole in the bottom of the plane. And I was like, I could do that. But yeah, so be on the lookout. Never fly again if you don't want me to be your pilot. So when you hear it come over, it'd be Captain Cox speaking. Just remember that's me. Have yourself a great evening, and I'll see if I can touch this baby down.
not apologetic.
Nonsense.